Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. As we continue today talking about Bible stories you've probably never heard, the story I'm going to tell today involves some traditional aspects that aren't directly recorded in the Bible, and it's also a story that covers several Bible generations. I'll call it the Red Cord. It all started before the Hebrew people became slaves in Egypt. In Genesis 38, we are told the story of some twins who were born. It was important in those days to determine which was the firstborn, because the firstborn son received the majority of the inheritance, including the land. So when the time of delivery came, one of the babies stuck out its hand, and the midwife tied a crimson thread around its wrists, saying to herself, "This is the firstborn." However, the babies turned in the womb, and the hand was withdrawn, and the other child was born first, and the child with the thread was born second. The one who was firstborn was named Perez, and his family was blessed with the inheritance. The other, who had the red thread on his wrist, was named Zerah, and his family did not get the lion's share of the inheritance. Later, one of Perez's descendants was Salmon, who we talked about a little yesterday. He was one of the two spies that Joshua sent into Jericho to ascertain how prepared for war and the morale of the people of Jericho before the battle. There, Salmon befriended a prostitute named Rahab, and Rahab protected Salmon and his partner and let them down from her window in the wall with a red rope. They told her to leave the red rope hanging there as a sign of protection for her in the coming battle. And sure enough, when Jericho fell, Rahab and her family were saved. Now, you probably know about the Battle of Jericho. You probably remember how the Israelites marched around the city and then how the walls of the city came tumbling down. The most significant point in all that is that this was not their battle. The battle was won by God. God caused the walls to come down, not them. As a sign for them to recognize God's place and their place, it was mandated that no one should take any spoil from the battle. All of it was to go into the temple treasury to be devoted to God. This was God's victory, so the spoils of the war went to God. No one was to keep anything. Alas, a man named Achan did. He saw a mantle or cloak, and under it there was some gold and silver. He took it all and hid it under his tent. Now this is where tradition comes in. You see, Achan was a descendant of that child who had the red thread tied around his wrists and then who didn't get the inheritance of the firstborn. Perhaps Achan still felt the sting of being cheated out of what he thought rightfully belonged to his side of the family. We don't know. But the tradition says that the mantle that first caught Achan's eyes and that he took was sewn through with red threads. The Bible doesn't tell us that, but it certainly does tie the story together across the generations, doesn't it? Well, the story doesn't have a nice ending. In Jericho, they had conquered a large, imposing city. Next up was a small city named Ai, and they went up against it and were soundly defeated. God did not fight on their side. In prayer, God revealed that someone had kept some of the loot from Jericho, and so they cast lots, and eventually the lot fell on Achan. He admitted what he had done and told where the loot was. Joshua sent men who found it just where he said, and they brought it back. Achan and his family were put to death in order to purge this sinfulness from the people. Then they piled up a huge heap of stones over their bodies as a sign to remind everyone to listen to the word of God and not to do as Achan had done. 3 stories and 3 red cords. one a mark of distinctiveness, one a mark of salvation, one a mark of sin. In those same ways, these stories apply to us. We are distinctive in that even though we are not firstborn, that is Jesus' place, but we are and always loved children of God. Like Rahab, we are saved through the grace of God, even as all around us collapses into rubble. And like Achan, we remain trapped in the web of our own sinfulness as we look out for ourselves and ignore the Word of God. Maybe we should wear a red thread around our wrists every day to remind us of all three of those. We belong. We sin. We are saved. There's a hymn in our hymnal called "Let Streams of Living Justice," and part of the second verse reads, "Weave our varied gifts together, knit our lives as they are spun. On your loom of time enroll us till our thread of life is run. O great weaver of our fabric, bind church and world in one. Dye our texture with your radiance, light our colors with your sun." Thanks be to God for the thread of grace weaving through our lives. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.